Van Quest, England's finest.
Obviously, there's a shitload of stuff to talk about today, so let's get on with it. But there was beautiful freezing fog outside this morning, so I recorded that from the car. So I'll be talking over that until or unless I run out of footage, and then you'll be back to looking at my ugly mug. So enjoy. I suppose, regrettably, that a disclaimer is necessary. I do not like Donald Trump. I think his policies, etc., are stupid. I think he will be incredibly harmful. And all these criticisms and commentaries are coming from a person who is very much on the far left, way down in the bottom left of the political compass. An ideological anarchist, a leftist, but also a pragmatist. That said, what was the point of the Women's March? It was an incoherent mess. It was organised by radical feminists, one of whom is a hijabi and advocates for Sharia law. Isn't there an inherent contradiction in marching supposedly for women's rights while also advocating for an actual genuine misogynistic patriarchy? Doesn't anyone else see a contradiction, a problem there? And the rhetoric from the official social media accounts of the Women's March was full of the very stuff that handed us Donald Trump in the first place. Talk of patriarchy and rape culture and wage gaps and all kinds of other social justice, in the pejorative sense, rhetoric. Like I said, the very kind of stuff that gave us Donald Trump in the first place. This fixation on middle-class first world problems over genuine, actual, pressing issues. Like I say, it was an incoherent mess, and the people at the thing weren't much better. Signs saying eradicate men, signs contradicting each other. And yet they did take the time to exclude, or try to exclude, a pro-life feminist group that still opposed Donald Trump. So I guess intersectionality only goes so far. But this is the problem with intersectionality, isn't it? It tends to break apart and atomize movements. What should have been able to have a coherent goal, maybe calling for a change to the Electoral College, a respect to the popular vote, just general an opposition to Donald Trump. That could have been a coherent, unifying thing that everyone could have rallied around. But instead, you get this fragmented, infighting, first world problems. And what has it really accomplished? A very temporary high. I went on the EU march, which at least had a central idea of what it was about, and you get a crowd high. But this is the same crowd high that Trump supporters got when they went to his rallies and so on. It's not inherently a good thing that a lot of people turn out all in one place and get each other hyped up. You need something coherent, a message, an idea, something, and there was just nothing there. In the end, it appears to have done more to galvanize Trump's support and to push more people onto Trump's side from moderate positions than to help oppose him at all. It just ended up looking absurd and ridiculous. And we've seen this hype, this crowd hype, play out in other ways, with the inauguration riots, which have also helped Trump, the punching of Richard Spencer, which has helped him, and he knows it. People ask me, how can you defend a Nazi? Well, I'm not defending a Nazi. He's not a Nazi for a start. Fascist, right-wing, certainly, but not a Nazi. They ask me, how can you defend a Nazi? I'm not. I'm defending a human being. I'm not defending his ideas. I don't think he should be sucker-punched and attacked without warning. But we've seen how this is escalating things. That the alt-right people are now talking about getting guards or being ready to fight back in the future. So that's an escalation. Someone got shot at one of the Milo protests. It's still a bit opaque as to what exactly is going on, who got shot, whether it was in self-defense or not, what side, in inverted commas, they were on. And you had a rebel media reporter getting punched as well. You're on a women's march, and a man punches a woman, and rather than intervene, intercede, do anything, apparently the people present just made all kinds of excuses, shielded him, spirited him away through the crowd. So, the hypocrisy is obvious, and with all these actions, whether it's burning out a limo, punching Richard Spencer in the face, or whatever, you are feeding the beast. You are making things worse. You are increasing sympathy for Donald Trump and his allies. You are moving people further to the right in reaction to your actions, just as they've been moving to the right in reaction to your actions. A huge part, not the only thing, but a big part of what fed the rise of Donald Trump has been this kind of hyper-PC blame culture bullshit, blaming men, blaming white people, whatever, for everything. Little wonder then, if you've placed such an emphasis on identity politics, that white identity politics, that male identity politics has risen up in response to that. If you're going to have your movements looking out for your interests, they argue, why shouldn't they have their movements looking out for their interests? And honestly, short of the extremism, it's hard to argue that, so long as you're accepting movements for other groups. They do have unique interests. Many of them possibly could use a little attention. In Britain, the kids performing worst at school are white working class boys, but we pay little attention to it because they've been demonized so much. That's not to advocate for white supremacy any more than I think problems in the black community support black supremacy, but there are issues that we obviously should consider looking at and dealing with. I don't think the approach is identity politics. I think we need to tackle these things regardless of these other issues. Poverty is poverty. It hurts everyone regardless how much melanin they have in their skin or what dangly or non-dangly bits they have between their legs. If you tackle the underlying issue, if it adversely affects one particular group over another, then fixing the issue will fix that issue more for that group which suffers more. That's just common sense, and it's a way of doing things that doesn't alienate and divide people. What's worse for me is watching how many people are excusing what's happened, excusing the violence, excusing the rhetoric, and parading an obvious double standard as they do so. How many people do you know that have retweeted memes about flowcharts when it's okay to punch a Nazi, or references to Indiana Jones or whatever? What you have to understand is, as much as you violently disagree with and hate his ideology, people like him violently disagree with and hate your ideology. All the justifications that you make for violence are justifications that they can make to themselves to justify violence against you. It's self-defeating. And honestly, the right wing has a point when they point to the lack of violence on their side. Sure, you can point to a few individual incidents of particularly unhinged people, like here in the UK, the guy who shot Joe Cox. But you don't see the same kind of rioting, the same kind of attacks on society as a whole. You tend to see lone gunmen and so on. The right wing, for whatever reason, and it's a good thing, has become terrified of violence, of playing into that stereotype. But how long is that going to hold out? How long are they going to stand there and take it? A one-sided fight is bad enough, but a two-sided fight, when you've got two factions rioting, breaking things, beating people up, that's going to be much worse. And furthermore, it will again only push people towards Trump. See, here's the thing. I don't want Trump to be able to enact most of his policies, though getting out of the TPP was good. I want him defeated. I want the backlash against him to bring about genuine, actual left-wing reform, not ID politics. No. Genuine, useful, practical, political reform that doesn't demonize any group, that doesn't blame any group for all problems. One that actually tries, at least, to fix society, not just in America, but elsewhere. I want a backlash against this massive shift to the right that's gone on. But I place large blame for that shift on my own tribe, on the left. I think they carry a lot of the blame because of the things that they've done, the things that they do. I want him and his ilk beaten, but I understand why people voted for him. I understand why people self-destructively voted for Brexit, even though it only harms them to have voted Trump, to have voted Brexit. At least he was lying to them. You know, he was making the effort to lie to people and tell them that he would deal with their issues, deal with their problems. That's more than the other sides. Many of us have been talking about these problems and predicting this issue and saying how these actions and these ideologies and so on were pushing people to the right for quite some time. And we were right. We might not be right about how to proceed in the future, but the fact that we were right about predicting it in the past and the effect that it's had suggests, at least, possibly, that we might have had a point and that it might be worth listening to us rather than trying to alienate us and push us away. You know, us commentators and observers and people who are politically are basically on your side, and we want you to win, but not to win on the basis of the things that you've been talking about lately, and trying to warn you about how you were alienating people like us, even. You know, I'm hardly a moderate, I'm a pretty radical leftist, but yeah, I want to win. I want to beat these people. I don't want their ideas to get traction, and yet they have. And yet you seem to have done everything you can over the past at least half decade to get us to where we are now. So, yeah, I don't want this to be relentlessly negative. So what can we do? What's my appeal to you? Ditch the ID politics. Get shot of it. You know, feminism is over. You've got equality. You know, as far as racial issues, the demand now is for them to be the rules to be applied evenly, not to change the rules. You need to stop arguing for special exceptions for protected groups. You're no longer arguing for equality. You're arguing for special treatment. You're arguing, ironically, for privilege when you argue that people should be given specific advantages, and that only alienates people who are in bad situations but have the wrong skin color, which in this case would be white. You know, you're alienating masses of people that you need to be on your side and whose issues you need to serve, and you should ethically serve. You know, these problems are universal, not racial. The paramilitarization of the police in the US is a big issue for anyone who's poor or driven through desperation or other means into crime. Poverty itself, education issues, public education issues, these affect people across racial and gender lines. But you insist on partitioning everything into all these subcategories. It not only kills your ability to effectively protest, but it kills your ability to form broad alliances on issues that matter, on things that matter. You know, this whole everything protest started out with the G20 type protests, starting in the late 90s, I think, when the idea was that you would just bring anyone and everyone together possible protesting whatever issues, so long as they agreed on that one thing. And that kind of worked for a while until they adapted and got around it. But the real thing that broke it was this introduction of intersectionality within it, which means you weren't inviting everyone who opposed, you were inviting people to agree on everything, and that started breaking you down into factions and so on. That's how you get the police float at the Toronto Pride March getting cancelled due to intervention from BLM supporters. that doesn't help anything. That's how the Women's March ends up excluding pro-life women who are otherwise on board with everything else and oppose Trump. And again, I'm pro-choice, not pro-life, but they have a right to express themselves too. And why would you exclude them if your central thing is supposedly being against Trump? So long as you constantly fixate on identity, and so long as you constantly exclude and blame white people, men, other groups like that, you're only shooting yourself in the foot. You're hobbling and crippling your own capability to get anything done. And it's a cause of despair to watch you continue to double down on these failed tactics, to watch Bernie even walk back from his criticisms of identity politics and the problems that they caused during the campaign against Trump, and to even embrace those issues and to try and blame the opposition on that. It's just mind-boggling. So what can you do? Refocus on class and wealth issues, things that cut across all these divides. Emphasize people's common humanity. All Lives Matter is a better slogan than Black Lives Matter. Emphasize that. It's hard to be positive because I know nobody is listening. And I know that we're basically doomed. And if you carry on the way you are, things are going to continue to push to the right. Trump, if he chooses to stand again, will get another term if things carry on like this. They may even solidify and expand their control. Is it 2 years to the next elections? In the States, it could get worse there. It will, because the US is such a world leader and everyone watches their media and news and sees what happens there, you may end up pushing France towards Le Pen. It's this stubborn refusal to learn. I use this analogy often, but you don't fix a smashed bottle with a hammer, and using a progressively larger series of hammers doesn't help at all. You need to switch tactics. You need to find some glue, bring people together. When you alienate and demonize people like me who are on your political wing but saying, whoa, hang on, this isn't working, this hasn't worked for a long time, it's antithetical to left-wing values, come on, reassess, rethink, you're just making things worse for yourselves. I don't think I'm some kind of political genius, but even I could work out what was going wrong here, and even I have managed to garner some idea of how you can change things and fix things and bring people back together. The rhetoric around the march, the contradictions around the march, the pointlessness of the march, its incoherence, its lack of ability to express what it was even about, these all stand against you. The ID politics stands against you. So if you're going to have a protest, make it about a single good point and bring people together regardless of other differences. Someone has suggested having a big protest on tax day to demand seeing Donald Trump's tax returns and for him to disclose all of his business and everything publicly. That's a single unified point on a good day to do it that could possibly be quite effective, and anyone could turn up to that. You wouldn't have to demand that everyone agree with every iota of trans rights, gay rights, women's rights in terms of radical feminism, environmentalism and everything else. Surely everyone can agree that transparency and disclosure on the part of a president is a good thing, and you could get a lot of people together there. I mean, a lot of Trump's supporters were starting to get a bit antsy up until this point. His appointments are not draining the swamp. They're people like Goldman Sachs employees and so on, and lots of people were starting to have second thoughts. Well done, you've successfully galvanized them back into his support camp by rioting, by punching people, by having a large pointless protest full of nonsense rhetoric about middle-class first world problems and the buzzwords you got from your gender studies class. Well fucking done. God, I'm trying to be positive and it's just not happening because the only way you can get to somewhere positive is by eliminating all of these negative issues. Let's try one more time. Focus on people's common humanity. Pick a single topic for a protest and accept people to join that protest regardless of how you disagree on other things. Fixate on policy, hammer it home, hold him to his promises, the good ones, and oppose the bad ones. Don't get hysterical. Damn it, no, I can't do it. I have to go back to the negative. Watching this, everything that's unfurled over the last few days, reminds me of nothing so much as the Tea Party protests against Obama. Equally poorly researched, such as the claim he's going to pull out of the UN. That's a bill that's been put forward every year for something like 20 years. You know, I shouldn't have to be fact checking the left on Snopes to see whether they're talking bullshit, because you shouldn't be talking bullshit. You know, the threat to your abortion rights is incredibly minimal, and so far is only rhetoric. The ACA is kind of broken. It's helped a lot of people. We don't know what they're going to replace it with yet, so that seems premature. No, I can't find a positive way to do it. There's just so much standing in the way that has to be knocked down and eradicated first before you can even start to build on something positive. And time is ticking away. You don't have much time. This is a period in which the left should be self-reflecting, reassessing, pivoting, and going back to basically its working class societal issue roots. But it's not. And I don't think it's going to. And that depresses me. And that's why I'm blaming the left for where we are and why we're not going to be able to overturn it. So please, I am pleading with you, stop making things worse. Please stop. Take a step back. Reassess what's going on. Reassess where you are. Decide if you want to be self-righteous or if you want to win. Think tactically. Look at the broader social issues. Try and bring people together. Please. I don't want Trump or his ilk or his successor, whatever, to stay in power. I don't want May to stay in power in the UK. Like I said, I went on the EU march. It was a nice high, but it made absolutely no difference whatsoever. It's a hard Brexit down the line, even though 48% plus people don't want that, even though we had our big marches. Marches make you feel good, but they don't actually accomplish anything. I wish I could end on a positive note, but I can't. Dang.